Hey everyone, Chris here from IELTS Advantage. Hope that you're all doing well. And in this video, we're going to focus on writing, and it's quite a unique video because instead of what I do normally, which is look at students' work and then give feedback on the students' work, we're going to flip it. We're going to do a role reversal. So what I've done is I took a whole writing test, task 1 and task 2, questions that I've never seen before, and I did it under exam conditions in the same way that you guys would write your essay. And then I would like you to watch me writing it and then give me feedback. So what that will do is it will force you to think more like an examiner. And if you think like an examiner on test day, you're more likely to get a higher band score because you'll be able to look at your own writing and give yourself feedback on test day. So it's highly valuable for a student to think more like an examiner. And that's what we try and do with our VIP students. And that's why they are so successful on test day. And then the second reason to do this is I've talked you through my thinking, what I'm thinking while I'm writing that. I couldn't do that 100% because the essay would have been terrible if I was just focusing on teaching rather than focusing on writing. But I've tried to have a balance between talking you through my thinking and my writing and writing a good essay. Bonus points for the people who can spot the 2 grammar mistakes that I made while I was writing. At the end, I made a big mistake. What I did was I focused on a detail that wasn't important at all, and I didn't check my work properly at the end. And that is a massive strategic error and something that I would really criticize a student for, and I did it. So that shows you that, even IELTS experts or so-called experts are human too, and we all make mistakes. So hopefully this video is useful. Watch it. Feel free to give me feedback in the comments. And if you can spot those 2 mistakes, you'll get bonus points. Okay, so I have 2 tasks here. Task 2 is worth double task 1. So I'm going to start off with task 2. So the first thing I need to do is just read the question and understand it. So let's move this down here so we can just focus on this one. Some people say that now is the best time in history to be living. What is your opinion about this? What other time in history would be interesting to live in? Okay, so I've understood all the words, I understand the sentences, I understand exactly what they're looking for, and I understand what type of question this is. This is a double question. They're asking me 2 separate questions. Okay, so now that I've understood it, what I need to do is plan it out. So what I'll do, so I'm going to paraphrase. I'm going to disagree because of social media. What other time in history would be? Okay, so it doesn't really matter what I choose here. It's just something that is easy to write about. It's easy to write about why social media makes this not the best time to be living in history. I also need to make sure that I reference other times, because really what it's asking us to do is compare now with all the other times in history. So I'm just putting that in just as a quick note. Other time, 60s because of music. Now I could have chosen World War II because I know a lot about that period, but it's a bit difficult to say why that would be interesting because a lot of people were dying. The 60s, I know a lot about music in the 60s, so I'm not picking the definitive answer. This is not a intelligence test or a general knowledge test. This is a writing test, so I'm just going to be writing about something that's easy for me to write about. So the best time, keyword there is best, and keyword there is interesting. So it's about the best time and an interesting time. Okay, so that's my introduction planned out, and basically this plans out the rest of my essay. Just keep an eye on the time. I think I started at about 5 past. Okay, so I've got, okay, main body paragraph 1, topic sentence, disagree because of social media. Okay, so why does social media make it not the best time to be living? Okay, why being constantly connected to other people? Why does this make it a bad time to live? Okay, I'm happy with that one. Let me just go back. So I'm just adding little ideas that are popping into my head, but I'm constantly going back to the question. Okay, so why is it interesting? Well, before the 1960s, music was very boring, was very conservative, and then the Beatles happened. So I'll talk about the Beatles and what they did to music. And then an example, I'll use one of the songs and talk about why that's interesting. Again, it doesn't have to give a definitive history of the 60s. It just has to talk about what I think is interesting about it. Okay, I know what I'm going to put in the conclusion, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Okay, how am I for time? That took me about 7 minutes, so I think I'm just looking at the watch on my wrist to try and make it realistic. Okay. I'm taking the question down again because I'm paraphrasing this. Okay, many believe that the modern era is the most optimal time to be alive. Very kind of optimal is a very scientific, techie word, but right now that's the best I can think of. What I'm not going to do is spend 5 minutes trying to worry about one word. So let's move on. Okay, so let's check that. Many believe that the modern era is the most optimal time to be alive. I strongly. I've turned off spell check to make it hard. I strongly disagree with this statement due to the stress social media causes, and the 1960s would have been a more interesting decade to live through. So I missed out the reason. So I want to state my reason here, because what I want is for the examiner to read this and know exactly what I think about the question. And then this also presents a little plan for me. I'm going to read it one more time because I made a few mistakes there. Many believe that the modern era is the most optimal time to be alive. I strongly disagree with this statement due to the stress social media causes, and the 1960s would have been a more interesting decade to live through because of the musical revolution. Okay. Why did that automatically? I thought I turned that off. I thought I turned the automatic spell checker off. Apologies. I don't know how to turn it off. Okay. That's cheating. let's read this. The current time is one of the worst times to exist due to the omnipresence of social media apps. These sites reduce quality of life for millions of people because modern humans can rarely switch off and relax. It is important for people to have time alone in order to refresh themselves and look after their mental health. Constant notifications increase anxiety and make people feel inadequate due to the impossible task of competing with everyone else. So I need to explain this a little bit. For example, Instagram portrays impossible beauty standards which make many young men and women feel they are less than those they follow. Okay, so for example, Instagram portrays impossible beauty standards which make young men and women feel they are less than those they follow. So my main point is about kind of never being able to switch off and connect. Is this a okay, this is related, but is this more peer pressure and comparing yourself to others rather than... Okay, let's change this a little bit. For example, I know I've repeated the word attention twice. I know many of you are freaking out. Don't worry. All right. The current time is one of the worst times to exist due to the omnipresence of social media apps. These sites reduce quality of life for millions of people because modern humans can rarely switch off and relax. It is important for people to have time alone in order to refresh themselves and look after their mental health. Constant notifications increase anxiety and make people feel inadequate due to the impossible task of competing with everyone else in the world. For example, Instagram notifies you when someone likes your picture, and many young people feel stressed if they do not get enough attention, but also can't stop checking their phones. And just changing the vocabulary a little bit and sharpening it up. Check their feeds. This isn't like check is a simple word. There is a simple word, but feeds is a very topic specific word. And to use this correctly, indicates to the examiner that you really know this topic, social media, and if you have the ability to use this type of vocabulary, even though it's not a very long, complicated word, it is very topic specific. Okay, so I am 20 minutes in and I'm halfway through. I might have made some mistakes here. I don't know, but I'll check at the end. What other time? Okay. The 60s would have been a fascinating time to experience because of the innovations. Yeah, there were many innovations in music. Before then, music was quite boring and there was little experimentation. Bands like the Beatles completely transformed the cultural landscape by introducing a completely new sound. This would have been extremely exciting because there are very few times in history when someone can experience something completely unique for the first time. For instance, their album excuse me. I don't know if it was Sgt. Pepper's that had Indian, like the sitar and stuff. I definitely know that they used the sitar, and that was quite revolutionary for Western audiences. So, but it doesn't matter because it's not a Beatles or a music test. So, It just matters that we're able to explain to the examiner what we think. So the 60s would have been a fascinating time to experience because of the innovations in music. Before then, music was quite boring and there was little experimentation. Bands like the Beatles completely transformed the cultural landscape. A new sound. This would have been exciting because there are very few times in history when someone can experience something completely unique for the first time. For instance, the Sgt. Pepper's album forged new ground in production with people hearing pop songs fused with traditional instruments from India for the first time. Okay, so I've got about 12 minutes left, so I better finish this up. Going to write incessant, but I don't know how to spell incessant 100%, so I'm not going to take the risk. Because believe it or not, I'm not checking the dictionary or anything like that. I have a pretty good idea how it's spelled, but I don't want to take any risks. Constant, I've used that. Incessant, I don't know how to spell it. Omnipresent, I've already. And I could have talked about how terrible music is these days, but I don't have time to do that. It is truly terrible. So, all right. In conclusion, although this current time has experienced many technological breakthroughs in the digital space, companies like Facebook and Twitter have a detrimental impact on our mental health, making it one of the worst times to be alive. So I'm linking it back to the question. I would have preferred to live through the 1960s because of how exciting new music was back then. So interesting, exciting. Okay. Let's check the word count. So I've got about 7 minutes to check this. So I'm on time. 308. So the sweet spot is kind of between 260 to 300. So I'm a little bit over, but that's not a big deal at all. Once you're going much over 300, then you get into problems. But 8 words over 300 is not a huge deal. What I'm going to do is read it all again, because it's very difficult to spell check, grammar check, vocab check whenever you're thinking about writing at the same time. So what we like to do is just focus now on not writing the essay, just checking the essay. Okay. I hope I haven't missed anything or made any mistakes. I'm sure I'll be told. It's social media. One of the detrimental effects of social media is nasty comments. So hopefully I haven't made any mistakes, but I'm sure you'll tell me if I did. All right, I still have 5 minutes. So what I want to do is just go through this and look for, are there any improvements that I could make to the vocabulary? Social media. So if social media, let's say social apps, to showing the examiner I'm aware of this collocation. Okay, I talked about Facebook and Twitter instead of social media, so that's fine. 1960s, 60s, the 1960s. I don't want to change it to the 60s, even though in common, it's common knowledge that if you're talking about the 60s, it's probably the 1960s, but I don't want to give the examiner any excuse to mark me down, because it could have been the 1860s or the 1760s. I don't think that's a huge deal, but quality of life, notifications. optimal time, fascinating time, current time. So I've got time a lot, but it's not just time. It's a lot of collocation. So current time, fascinating time, interesting time, interesting decade, fascinating, stuff like that. For the first time, current time. So the examiner's not going, hopefully, the examiner is not going to look at this and go, you repeated time, 4 times or whatever. They'll look at it and think, okay, collocation. Mental health. Well-being. Music. There's no other. Can't think of any other way of saying. You could talk about songs, but it's not really. It's music is what we're really talking about here. Musical. I'm just changing stuff for the sake of changing it. I don't think that improves the essay, but I just know that many of you will be screaming, "Oh, you used the word music 4 times." What do you call the name of the producer? George someone. Might remember it later on. It's like a really simple name, but the Beatles would not have been the Beatles without their producer. Let's put George. We'll come back to that if we can. If I don't remember it, I'll just remove it. Okay, so I'm running out of time. I spent about 40 minutes. My watch is saying 45. It's 6:45 a.m. I started at 6:05 a.m. So we just need to move on. If we spend too much time on this, we're not going to have enough time to get this done. So what I do is I first read this. Your friend has been offered a place on a course at the university where you studied. He or she would like your advice about finding a place to live. Okay. So I'm going to use my real university where I actually studied. And what I'm going to do is just use this as a plan. So these are going to be my 4 main body paragraphs. I'm going to check the tone. Your friend. So I'm going to say, dear Will. My little boy is called William, so I'll imagine I'm writing to him. So it's very informal, just dropping you a quick note to let you know a little bit about the best place to stay in Bristol. Okay, when I was there, I lived in Clifton. It's famous for the beautiful suspension bridge and for its little artisan shops, but it's also the most expensive area and very few should live there because of the cost of living. Describe where you lived when you were a student at the university. Okay, recommend the best way for him or her to look for accommodation. Again, I'm using informal language because it's a friend. I reckon the best place for you to look is on the University of Bristol's website because it will let you know about staying in halls. Halls is a British Irish way of saying dormitories, like where students live. I reckon the best place for you to look is on the University of Bristol's website because it will let you know about staying in halls. They'll give you a few different options and then you can visit them in person to get a feel for where they are and what they'd be like to live in. So I'm using lots of contractions, they'll, they'd, I'm, because it's an informal letter. Recommend the best way for him to look for accommodation. Warn him, her of mistakes students make when choosing accommodation. Okay, it's just an informal sign off. All right, so that took me 9 minutes, so probably a little bit too fast actually. So probably made a few mistakes. Dear Will, I don't know, when I'm writing letters, I don't normally do this, but some examiners think that this is important, so I'm just going to play it safe. I'm just dropping you a quick note to let you know a little bit about the best place to stay in Bristol. When I was there, I lived in Clifton. It's famous for the beautiful suspension bridge and its little artisan shop. So I'm adding in, little adjectives. This is a way that you can, expand your vocabulary quite easily, as long as you know what they mean and you know how to spell them, and they are appropriate. But it's also the most expensive area of the city, and very few students live there because of the cost of living. Okay, I reckon the best place for you to look is on the University of Bristol's website, because it will let you know about staying in halls. They'll give you a few different options, and then you can visit them in person to get a feel for where they are and what they'd be like to live in. The biggest blunder I made was choosing to live in the posh part of town on my own. Not only was I skint for most of the year after paying my rent, I didn't really get to make many new mates because I didn't get to live with other students. Halls are cheap and you're guaranteed to meet new people. Okay, so I'm going to have a bit of time left, but this is all true. And it's easiest to just write about something that is true. I went to the University of Bristol. I lived in Clifton. It was too expensive. I lived on my own. That was a mistake. So it's just easier to write about. Just trying to make it a little bit more informal. And this is only like a 3-letter word, but only, very high level English learners or native English speakers would really know how to use that word. So just demonstrating that it's not about using big, long, complicated words. Sometimes, a 3-letter word can be way more impressive than a big, long, complicated word. It's a little bit long, I think. So I'm just edit. So the more if I'm write a very long essay or a very long letter like this, I can just edit it down, and that reduces the chances of making any mistakes. Freshers is like new people, first years, freshers. They have parties. Well, everyone has parties at university. But I'm just trying to add in as much topic-specific vocabulary as possible. Halls are cheap and you're guaranteed to make friends at the epic freshers parties. Just sign off, give me a bell. Again, just adding in a little bit of extra, a few final flourishes. Give me a bell means call me. So in a formal letter, it would say, please phone me if you need anything else. In an informal letter, you can do something like that. So we're all done, I think. 5 minutes early. Still can't think of that name. Producer George Martin. I think it is. I knew it was a really simple name. Let's check. Beatles producer George Martin. Got it. Alright, I forgot to check the word count for this one. 193. So that's perfect. The sweet spot for these is kind of between 160 and 200. And it's much better to write a essay around that kind of word count and spend a lot of time thinking about it and shortening it, and maybe not shortening it, but just tightening it up and improving it. I'm sure that I've made some mistakes in here. Remember, to get a band 9, you're allowed to make some slips. So please don't look at this if I have made some mistakes and go, oh, you're a terrible teacher, you don't know what you're doing. Hopefully that was useful. But apologies that I couldn't talk you through absolutely everything, but I wanted to make sure that it was a good essay at the same time as it being educational. So apologies if there was a lot of dead noise where I wasn't actually talking, but it's difficult to write and talk and think all at the same time. Hopefully that was useful, guys, and it was definitely useful for me to kind of see what the challenges are for students and do this myself and put myself under pressure, and let's see if there's any negativity. Hopefully not. Hopefully it was useful. Thank you.